Welcome, everybody. We're in the process of making sure everybody gets in.
Hello, everyone.
I just accepted open containers, but I don't know who you actually are. So if you could rename yourself, if you're willing.
Good morning.
Morning, everybody.
Yeah, good morning from the U.S. East Coast. Okay, everyone's doing okay?
Pretty good over here.
Excellent. Yeah, so let me repost. It's in the meeting invite, but just to make sure people get it, I'm going to repost the URL for the meeting notes. If you would please add yourself to the list of attendees. Phil Estes, you are absolved.
Thank you.
I can attest to that. Switching between Zoom accounts is not the most fun thing to do.
Nor is it necessarily something that catches on.
Yeah. It's really awkward when you sign into like a relative school thing and it says OpenSSF operations. Like, oh, hold on.
As I comment about many things, if that's your worst problem, it's a very good day.
That is so true. It looks like we've got the majority of people joined now. So we've got a good group today.
Do we have a quorum?
Scrolling through the list there. Let's see. So let's see, Luke, Dan, myself, you, Phil, Jennifer. Yeah, I think we are good to go. All right. So the first thing on today's agenda, as everybody is very well aware and I'm sure excited about, is the TAC election results. So actually, I didn't see, is Brian on the call? Okay, he is. Good.
I am here.
Wonderful. Yep. For future reference.
Yeah. So as I wrote into the meeting notes, congrats to returning members Dan Lawrence and Luke Hines, and welcome new members Abhishek, Arya, and Bob Calloway. I think all four of you are here. So congratulations.
Yes, congratulations.
Applause, or whatever folks want to do. +1 thumbs up. And as per the charter, the other three will be appointed soon by the governing board. I wanted to wait until this election was done before proposing a slate to the governing board of 3. So we'll be following up on that. The next governing board meeting isn't for another month. We just had ours at the beginning of, at the end of last week. So I'm going to try to do this over email, which requires universal written consent. That's the only chance of getting it done in between meetings. So I'll propose it. I'll see if I can get to UWC. With so many board members, it might be hard. It might mean that it has to happen by voice vote at the next governing board meeting. So it might be until next month. That would be the worst case. But the best case is that we get agreement and name 3 in time for the meeting, the next TAC meeting in 2 weeks.
Perfect. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, that was exactly my question, was what is the timeline? And yeah, if it's going to roll over to the next meeting. So if all things go well, the next TAC will take over this meeting, which then kind of leads into the TAC transition. Now, given that Dan and Luke are returning, I think that'll certainly make this a lot easier. And I know Abhishek has been involved already as well. So I guess really the question is, Dan, Luke, any requests for how you guys want to handle this transition, or you're good to go? I imagine you guys are pretty well informed and don't need a whole lot of handholding at this point. So
Yeah,
Well,
pretty much that. Yeah, nothing that comes
I was
to
gonna
mind
say
for myself.
one thing to note is that the new TAC will elect a chair amongst its members at the next. It'll be the first thing they do at their first full meeting.
exactly.
Yeah, no requests from my side. I think sometime in the next month or two would be great to get the TAC and governing board together so we can all meet, but that's kind of all.
Yeah, it would be nice to find, I mean, if we were in a normal mode where we were traveling again, I think we'd try to find like the next suitable security conference that most of us were going to try to be at or we're likely to be at, and try to see, could we do like a a couple hour kind of offsite, so to speak. But failing a physical conference, or not wanting to wait until June when supply chain security con takes place, maybe we can get a Zoom call together, of the TAC. It should be open, since all of our meetings should be open anyways, but really focused on how does the TAC want to work together over the next year, and what is its ambitions, what are its goals, because it's it should have more ambition than just having a call every 2 weeks where anybody can show up with whatever ideas they have. It should be, here's what we'd like to work together to do. So happy to convene that, happy to facilitate that from OpenSSF, but I think it'd just be a good way for us to congeal as a team.
If I may interrupt real quick, I would just want to note that we had an incredible slate of candidates, and if you were a nominee but weren't voted in, it is no slight. There is just an incredible number of awesome folks who were put their hat in the ring. So my thanks to every single one of you.
Yes.
And in fact, we had talked earlier about making the tax slightly larger. That discussion might reemerge again, because again, we had some really awesome folks. So anyway, my main point is thank you to everybody who put their hat in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for everybody for participated. I had the exact same thought. Maybe this could be a good time to have that discussion again. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of good folks. So, and I'll just say, as sort of outgoing TAC chair, like future TAC things, definitely agree with Dan and getting together with the governing board and sorting that out. I know the governing board has been focused a lot on sort of OKRs, and then obviously that dovetails with what the TAC is doing, what all the working groups are doing, and so I think that should help drive future initiatives and coordination amongst the working groups, of which sort of one of the next things for the TAC is to have those working groups come in and start giving their presentations about what they've been doing and where they're at and where they want to go, and then how that all gels with the strategy and what the governing board wants for OKRs as well. So I'll leave that as my 2 cents. Any other questions about the TAC, the election, moving forward? Oh, great. All right, so the next thing, so David Wheeler, I think we talked about this in the last meeting as well, around proposing, asking the new TAC to assign sponsors to each working group initiative thing. I think this is, I don't know if we want to take this up now or if we want the next TAC when they convene to actually discuss this, or if we want to hash out some of these ideas and then let the new TAC sort of take it from there.
I think just raising it here, and we've already got some of the new members who look suspiciously like old members, but yeah, I think just briefly mentioning it would be good.
Okay, perfect.
And we have now briefly mentioned it.
Sounds good. We'll move on to the meat of the topic then. So also, David, the GNU toolchain infrastructure project, would you like to take it from here and give us an update about what's happening?
Absolutely. So I don't know if David Elson, Carlos Sedano, or Kate Stewart are here. Any of you?
I am here.
Yeah, we're here.
Excellent.
Yep.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. So I no doubt will say all the wrong things, and then they'll have to correct me. But But since my name's stuck on this, let me at least kick this off and quickly break it to a rounder discussion. So the GNU toolchain project proposals actually been around for a long time. I think procedurally it got stuck, and I'm not sure what happened, so I'm trying to get this unstuck. But in my mind, this is a really straightforward proposal. It's a proposed project to provide the GNU toolchain with basically better secure infrastructure to make it much more secure. The there's more details in the various links there, but the GNU toolchain components are widely depended on. And I guess perhaps it's a little appropriate for me to make this proposal here to the TAC because years ago when I did a PhD dissertation, I actually wrote about the problems if you subvert the compilers or other key toolchain items. And it turns out to be bad. Which surprises exactly 0 people here, I'm sure. So, I mean, the good news is that there are actually organizations who've already stepped up, who are interested in doing this. And the governing board was presented to this a while back, but their immediate comment was that, you know what? It's always been that we ask the TAC to review a proposal before we make a decision on it, and I think that's entirely appropriate. Just procedurally, let's make sure we have review by this. I do want to make a couple clarifications. This is not, and I repeat, not LF is taking over GNU. Okay, that's not the point here. This is a really critical set of tools. We are providing infrastructure. The goal is to provide appropriate, strong infrastructure to protect something that a whole lot of us vitally depend on. Now, with that, that's the highlight. There's more details. I have sent emails and reminder emails asking people to look at this ahead of time. So
Carlos has some slides that might be worth walking through.
Oh yeah, if
absolutely.
you've got slides, that'd be great.
David and I had put together some slides just to run through things quickly with the TAC, so the TAC can have something to look at while you're talking. Do you want me to share my screen and I can run through the slides? It's only 8 slides. It should be relatively quick to go through these, and then we can make the slides available after the meeting with a direct link. So here I go. This one, I even used an LF background for this one.
Woo!
The slideshow. Actually, is this capturing my whole screen? Did it do that?
It looks fine to me. I see a funny box, but I do see a whole slide.
Yeah, I don't know why it's doing that funny box.
You don't need to worry about it.
Sure. So I will start off with the first slide saying thanks to the TAC for agreeing to listen to our proposal. It's about establishing the GNU toolchain infrastructure project. It's really about improving that foundational cybersecurity that we have with the system toolchain. And just to introduce ourselves, David, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to the TAC?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks. My name is David Edelson. I work at IBM Research. I'm a member of the GCC Steering Committee, which is the oversight organization for the compiler itself, and been working with Carlos for over a decade now with the leadership of the entire GNU toolchain and how to bring this process forward.
Yeah, thanks, David. My name's Carlos O'Donnell. I'm a distinguished engineer at Red Hat, and I'm also an upstream Core C library glibc steward. I've been working with David for, I'd say, almost 2 decades now on GNU toolchain, upstream toolchain, on kind of solving the problems that the toolchain has, both from an infrastructure perspective and also from advocacy and security perspectives as well. glibc, as you know, we have a lot of CVEs that we need to manage in runtimes, and so it's always interesting questions about how you improve those positions. So what we want to start with is establishing. So the GNU toolchain infrastructure project is about implementing state-of-the-art, robust, and secure infrastructure and processes for the GNU toolchain community. As David said, we've been working with the LF to get the project started. We even have a nice logo here that we can show because we've already been looking at logos. For those of you who are thinking, well, what do we include in the GNU toolchain? when we say the GNU toolchain, we're really talking about the, that world-class optimizing compiler for C and C++, Fortran, Go, and other languages, binutils, static linker, the debugger, the C library. And we also consider in here build tooling, make, autoconf, automake. There's an enormous amount of software that's still being built with autoconf and automake. And there's always considerations to be made across the entirety of build tooling, compiler, debugger, C library, and binutils. And this is a system toolchain that's used on many distributions. We're talking Debian, Ubuntu, everything from Amazon Linux 2022 to the latest Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9. This toolchain is a foundational system toolchain for the distribution. So a question comes up is why establish a new project now? And I'm going to pass this over to David, and I'll let David talk a little bit about this.
Well, as I said, this is really critical to the infrastructure of Linux itself. And we've been very, very grateful to utilize the infrastructure that Red Hat has been provided, very professional, and the volunteers in the community. But that infrastructure is showing its limitations, especially with the increasing demands that are coming about for cybersecurity, with the executive orders from the White House, the various supply chain requirements coming on, and this allows us now to follow on with the conversations we've been having with the Linux Foundation for, 4 or 5 years now about, and communications, just how to establish a better relationship and a new sort of infrastructure for the GNU toolchain itself, and to use this to update the infrastructure that we're going to use in the hardware and the services to be able to address with state-of-the-art infrastructure, timely information, how this can function well to provide the necessary security services that to going forward for this critical infrastructure that we have in the GNU toolchain.
Yeah, absolutely. So, to expand on the one sentence mission is just, a little bit more verbose here, which is really, to provide that secure and state-of-the-art infrastructure required to implement these cybersecurity best practices and really make the GNU toolchain this kind of foundational toolchain in a secure supply chain. And I think that when you expand this mission in this way, we're then able to come up with goals and OKRs against starting up this project. So I'll flip here and I'll ask David to talk a little bit about project goals that really come out of this expanded scope.
Well, as Carlos is saying, it's a matter of updating the infrastructure so that we can really provide and ensure this continued excellent infrastructure, this excellent software base that builds, the Linux distributions and the cloud and the infrastructure for the world. So we want to update this to ensure that the project will provide these secure, robust environment for the tool chain and the tooling. As Carlos mentioned, there are many, many dependencies, and we're incorporating those dependencies as direct dependencies as under the umbrella of this. So we want to be able to provide these verifiable sources for distributions, be able to attest to all the infrastructure that we have and all of the sources, being able to provide a modern infrastructure, improved CI and CD to really check off all the boxes that are in current and upcoming requirements, best practices for secure development, secure releases, secure maintenance of those, being able to, again, make it more robust, our CVE maintenance that we're already doing, to be able to provide, truly signed and utilize the best practices that the Linux Foundation has created for the Linux kernel itself, and to be able to adopt that same style of development, that robust, secure development, to ensure that we're able to provide, a continued in the next decades environment in which all of this software can be built for Linux. And included in that is we want to improve the advocacy for the project itself with focus on trust and cybersecurity, as we say on the slide, because we need a vibrant, robust project to have enough developers to provide this, not just develop the software itself, but able to have multiple reviewers to be able to trust the identity of people working on the projects. So we need to ensure that this project continues and through the advocacy efforts to ensure that we are able to, in the human side, address all of the security requirements as well.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that brings us to kind of CY22 OKRs, which is the things that David and I are pushing to look at in CY22, things we're trying to accomplish. You know, transitioning sourceware services. Sourceware.org is the systems that are currently provided by the infrastructure are provided by Red Hat, but maintained by volunteers. And a lot of those things we need to scale up, especially as we look at CI/CD. DJ Deloria and myself, for example, even in upstream for glibc, have been looking at patchwork layered on top of mailing lists driving CI/CD. And it's getting good traction with the existing community of developers, simply because it's a nice layered workflow. But we need more than that, right? We need artifact distribution. We need to evaluate SIG-Store. I'm already looking at salsa models. You know, glibc, we try to do at least one reviewed from another reviewer if you're committing into the repo, just because of the importance of the repository for the runtime. And so these are the kinds of things that we're looking at for CY22. Now, you know, in this process, we are collaborating heavily with LF's existing IT staff and learning from their experiences and the support that they've had for the Linux kernel. And so there has been some already work done with the LF IT staff on scoping costs and services sized with LF IT staff and management. So we kind of know what it would take to transition some of the services, what new services we're talking about, how we would spin them up. So as some people say, it's kind of a, you know, a shovel-ready project in that sense, right, David?
Exactly. Thanks, Carlos. And exactly as you said, I mean, this is something where we've been very effective with volunteers and the great services from Red Hat for the past more than 2 decades, which we greatly appreciate. But there are new challenges on the horizon, and we want to make sure that the GNU toolchain, you know, remains viable. And so this also isn't, as Carlos said, a plan to, okay, you know, give us money and now we're going to start up for bids and we're going to figure out what to do. I mean, we've been working with the LF for a number of years now, have a very detailed plan about how to proceed. We've been working with the IT staff at LF. This isn't a matter of also just going off, you know, give us money and we'll go to whatever other provider. This is specifically to work with the existing LF infrastructure that it's you know, very competent team that already exists there, and to expand that current support for the Linux kernel to cover the GNU toolchain, which, you know, historically has been sort of in this this intermediate place. I mean, it's been part of the GNU project, but it wasn't, you know, truly, it had already expanded, had more technical demands than the GNU project and the FSF were really able to support, which is why we're so appreciative of Red Hat stepping up. It's not a separate organization. It's not, you know, it's not hosted by Red Hat or, you know, Amazon or Google or anybody else. And so we're seeing, given these new requirements and the core place that it exists in the entire Linux ecosystem, to be able to take the sizing that we've done and go work with the OpenSSF to ensure the funding for this, so that Linux Foundation can provide and implement this plan that, as Carlos said, is, you know, shovel ready, and that we have going forward, and hopefully with the approval and support of the TAC and the board to be able to accomplish this.
Yeah. Thanks, David. Yeah, we've got one more slide here, which is kind of looking briefly at what does this mean in terms of a governance model? Like, how do the communities tie into this distinct project, which would be, you know, there's a bit of a question for the OpenSSF board to decide the exact, collaborate and decide the exact structure. But the way that David and I have been discussing this is, you know, you have these GNU toolchain communities, and they're the ones who have these requirements, and we're putting together how we're going to deliver the secure supply chain. And we we create an infrastructure and steering committee, which is that focal point, collects those requirements, and then we work with LFIT staff to prioritize and decide, okay, in CY22, which of these OKRs is first, which is priority, which one do we want to tackle first? And then keep moving like that from year to year, making forward progress on the project.
Right. And again, as David said, this isn't the LF or OpenSSF taking over the GNU toolchain project itself. That will still be the project as it exists. And this isn't the matter of having a flag day and coming to the community and just saying, okay, over this weekend, we're just going to shift everything over and it's all going to be run by the LF. I think this is going to be an evolution of this. But also, as we said at the very beginning, Carlos is the steward of glibc. I'm a member of the GCC steering committee. We've been discussing this with the leadership of the GNU toolchain for years as well. So we're coming to you, representing the GNU toolchain, that this is a direction that the GNU toolchain wants to go in.
And that's the list of slides. Yep, the last one's just a foundation. Perfect. And I'll stop sharing there. And David, I think it'll go back to you if you have any, Wheeler, if there's any questions from the TAC. Where David and
David's a great name.
David 2 and
David
back
3.
to David 1. If you have any
that won't
questions.
be confusing at all. Yeah, Mike, I see that Michael Windsor has a question. So Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, so this sounds pretty cool, and I'm trying to parse, like, there were a lot of the OKRs up there, or the sort of goals you had. Is this about securing your sort of project infrastructure? Is this about securing and sort of fixing vulnerabilities and/or preventing tampering in the tool chain itself? And I'm hoping it's all of the above, is this about also having your tooling be a more like integrated component of a secure supply chain, where you're starting to produce bills of materials and manifests and other things like that along the way? I'm like, there's a lot of potential across this whole space. Maybe it's all of the above, but I'm trying to figure out where you are leaning in right now, or what your thoughts are. Did my question make sense? First of all, I meandered.
Yes, I think it does absolutely make sense, Michael. I would say the OKRs, if I were to prioritize them, it's securing and transitioning some of our infrastructure first and foremost. We probably have too much access to Git internals. We should be switching to cgit. We should be switching to a different model for control of access of those sources with keys. And then after that, absolutely, I think glibc should have SPDX identifiers for all of the files. We should be able to make SBOMs for the sources that we copy from other projects and things like that. But I think that if I prioritized it, it would be securing some of that infrastructure initially and working with the projects to transition to secured infrastructure.
You're right. I mean, yeah, to follow up on Michael, I mean, yeah, it's all of the above. I mean, it's all the above in both. I mean, we already are addressing, with the great help of SUSE and Red Hat and Debian and other communities, the security issues in the software itself, as best we know, but we want to get to best practices for how that is actually deployed, how the services themselves, the hardware, the communication channels that we have, the signing of all the patches itself, the email communication, and how, as Carlos was saying, the Git itself, how we actually upload, the artifacts, making sure that all of those pieces are following best practices as well. I mean, we won't go into details, but let's just say that if some of the current practices aren't best practices.
We know all too well. None of us have any shame here, because if we don't open about it, we won't get it fixed. I'm very curious. So that all makes sense. I'm very curious about the opportunity, in so much as the tooling starts to, fulfill some of those, not just on how you guys build the tooling itself, but also the tooling so that anybody using your tooling is now automatically getting, a better inventory of all the things that they've got.
Oh yes. I mean, definitely. I mean, we've been working with Kate. I mean, as well. I mean, with all this SPDX stuff for having GNU Make and GCC being able to generate the bill of materials as well. I mean, yes, we definitely want our tooling to be able to simplify and automate the ability for all of the software generated by the tools to fulfill the software. I mean, not we're going to take over the security requirements of obviously those other tools, but we want to also, as part of this, be able to ensure that this is the foundational, the starting point of that security hierarchy and reproducible build and everything. And so, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the red hatters on this call know that I also wear a blue hat, which is like my Fedora hat. So I have this requirement with my blue hat on, which is like, how can I consume these things in Fedora? Because today, for example, we're often taking snapshots of upstream Git at a particular commit. And like, I really want that to be way, way better than what we do today in Fedora and the way that those binary artifacts and the source level artifacts progress into Fedora. So I see with my blue hat on that I want to make this a generic thing that allows Fedora to then consume the updates. My team currently does a rolling every 7-day update from upstream into one of our rolling releases. I would love for that process to roll in such a way that you could verify all the way from upstream where those sources came from. And then that just leads naturally into Fedora releases, and then those things lead into RHEL releases. So having a particular use case that is concrete, that you can walk through, that you can attach OKRs against for secure deliverables, 100%.
Exciting. Thank you.
I think Jacques Chester had his hand up next, and he's already noticed no matter what we do, we're probably going to get the HN conspiracy theorists. But hopefully, hopefully through mechanisms like this call, we'll at least get the full story out here. So
yes, they get around that lot. Yeah, I did zero in on one thing because of my particular interest at the moment, which was looking at SigStore. We've been doing some pretty heavy lifting in that department, focused on Ruby gems, but I expect that a lot of the work we've done is repurposable for other ecosystems. So when you get to that, please look me up and I will be happy to share so much with you about how it works and how it could be used.
That is super interesting, Jacques. And even like, I'm also thinking to myself, like I'm heavily involved in the Python community because Python wheels basically end up being binary artifacts you distribute. And I have so many questions. I'm just like, how are we uploading Python wheels to, oh my God, it makes me cry. But we will look you up and we will ask for your feedback, Jacques. Thank you very much for that.
No, and that's again, yeah, thank you very much, Jacques. But that, this is part of exactly why we want to integrate with the OpenSSF. I mean, to be able to leverage all the skill again for something like GCC, which is the foundation of this, and utilize all of this, this great infrastructure that OpenSSF is at the tip of the spear to improve this entire environment.
And we've had help from Python folks as well. So we've had been swapping notes between communities about what we're doing and what we're thinking. So I think Python folks are also definitely worth tapping into as well.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, maybe I will reach out to you earlier and ask who you're talking to in the Python community. Okay, thank you.
Hey, and this is Stephen. So just as another idea for collaboration, we're proposing a project called Persia, which is focused on distribution of artifacts. And there may be some opportunities for us to collaborate on how you're actually getting some of your downstream binaries and outputs from the new tool chain out to different projects.
Thanks, Steve. If you could expand on that in like a one minute summary, because I'm just gonna take a note here and I'll reach out to you again. But is it Persia? So distribution of artifacts, any artifacts, right? Like are they source artifacts, binary artifacts? Do you make the distinction? Does the distinction matter, etc.?
Yeah. So the project goal is to be pretty much artifact type independent, although we are targeting some specific communities to begin with, like distributing Docker images. And the high level idea is to make it much more resilient and robust to distribute packages by using some peer-to-peer infrastructure so that we can get it to a wider set of folks to tie into projects like like SigStore for security and signatures to make sure that you actually have information about the binaries you're downloading, and to make sure that it's done in a vendor neutral way, so that we have multiple companies and entities running instances that would give you a higher guarantee that the network will be up and resilient.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
I don't see any hands raised. Does anybody have any other questions or concerns?
How can we help? I mean, I think this is perfectly aligned with the work that we want to be supporting here at the OpenSSF. So just, you don't need to keep selling us. Just tell us where to sign or where to put our
a motion to approve it is probably the next step.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
My question is like, okay, great. I think there's a lot of enthusiasm for this. Great. What's the first step? Like, what's the first sort of tactical point of engagement?
Yeah, Michael, I think the first step is a member of the TAC needs to move to approve with a second and vote to approve. And I think that next step is to go to the governing board. While this doesn't technically, because the question is this appropriate? And then the next question, which the governing board will have to deal with, is do they want to put in additional funding? This actually already has some funding. We haven't focused on the funding because this is a technical discussion. There's actually already some funding, but I think there's an expectation that more would be appropriate. But that's a governing board discussion, not a TAC discussion.
And David, I totally agree. What I'm actually trying to think about is ignoring that for a moment, because we're in a technical conversation, right? How can we go from a presentation and a bunch of enthusiasm to another level of understanding? Like, is there a working group? Is there another longer meeting and conversation? How do we figure out which various parts of conversations we can sort of throw into this pile and start to sort of go from, this sounds great, and my boss asks me, what are they doing? I'm like, yeah, it sounds great. And I'd like to go from, it sounds great, to I have a clear understanding, and we can say, well, we want to engage here, or this is going to happen there, or whatever.
It will be great to invite them to the supply chain integrity working group. Like, that seems the right place to start some of these conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably a good suggestion.
Also, as Carlos and I presented in that next to last slide, for the OKR, it's basically, thanks very much for this question. Once we get the approval with the boards, to then work with Brian and the executive committee, and to work with the LF, is to basically, because I think there are some resources, as David Wheeler mentioned, we've been having this discussion for a while, and they're sort of waiting to be able to give the LF IT organization the green light to go ahead. And then we will start, as Carlos was saying, with the governance to set up the leadership from the GNU toolchain community, the leadership from the premier, platinum sponsors, and set up this advisory board and start being able to prioritize the actions and work with the LF to actually start doing that. And then also coordinate that with the current volunteers in the GNU toolchain community and Red Hat, who are running the current, hardware services infrastructure, and develop an actionable plan for how we're going to actually start moving pieces over, taking over responsibility, and just basically standing up, all these ideas. To actually start executing on it. With the great team that is at LF. To do that, and sort of, as I said, it's going to be, this isn't the flag day. This is going to be an evolution, and to work with that, both with taking the sourceware gcc.gnu.org infrastructure, moving that over, but also coordinating with the broader GNU toolchain community of, okay, these are going to be the new requirements for how to sign patches, how we're going to authenticate email, how we're going to do this, and bootstrapping the community up into that greater level of security. So that I think is the first thing to start doing, is to have this in place and then be able to start working on this.
Yeah, it does make sense, though, I guess, for the GNU toolchain infrastructure project, I think many of the members who end up on the steering committee, in terms of, as they're looking to prioritize the project, having us be invited to other working groups to look at how these ideas are evolving in order to actually be capable of properly prioritizing what projects we think we can work on, is also a good idea, right? So I think that may be saying, we've already got Jacques here tapping us on the shoulder saying, hey, look, we've already looked at Ruby gems and we've got some notes that we can share. We've talked to the Python community, we've got notes we can share. So all those things, and Steve as well for Persia, for distributing artifacts. Those are things that we're going to have to look at discussing, prioritizing, like the concrete nuts and bolts implementation of how do we do this, right? We release a compiler once a year. We release a core C library every 6 months. What happens at that 6-month boundary? What happens to the artifacts? What are we doing with those artifacts? Is going to be key for me as part of my OKRs.
So this is a perfect fit for us technically, I believe, and I'm hearing that echoed. So, I reckon I'm going to propose that we vote on this, okay, and then these folks can go forward to the board, and then the kind of the details of how they engage with different working groups and so forth, we can then start to explore that.
Yeah, I second that, Luke, and I also think it's premature to align it with any single working group. I think there's also likelihood that with a new TAC election completed, there's going to be a brisk review of the working groups to make sure that they're still aligned with the going forward efforts of the OSSF. So second the motion to bring this to a vote.
So in the simplest of terms, is anyone opposed? All right, with the lack of opposition, I say this is approved.
And just to again counter the conspiracy theorists, we're not taking over GNU. Okay, we're not taking over the tool chains. This is supporting infrastructure. But
and also, as people were saying, this is also not any funding of the FSF. This is not any funding of the GNU project.
Right. Okay.
Great. Okay. Next step will be on our shoulders to take this to the governing board. It's probably something we can combine with the other ask about TAC board members to hopefully make progress on this before the next governing board meeting. So we'll report back.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so and thanks very much, everybody. Thanks for your support in this, especially Brian and David Wheeler. We greatly appreciate your helping to spearhead this effort and bring this forward.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for your time, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Let's try, Ben. All right, any other topics that folks want to discuss? Apologize, my Zoom crashed and I had trouble getting back on there for a little bit, so if I missed anything. Are there any other topics though that folks want to discuss? Or?
Yeah, I had a quick topic as a follow-up from the previous meeting, and didn't want to put anyone on the spot as well, so I'm just looking for kind of a status update. So I know last week we discussed that we were going to like as a TAC try to define kind of how projects go through different stages to become an official project. And I think Luke was the one who suggested that the OpenSSF should define such a process and formalize it. So what were the thoughts on time frame, kind of like looking into that and like next steps?
Yes, I think what we did discuss at the last meeting was that, yes, we should do that. We do have some existing data that exists on the GitHub repo that sort of at a high level talks about a lot of these things in the different phases, but that we did agree that we need to flesh it out. And you're right, I believe it was Luke that said he would work on that a little bit more, but also that we would sort of let the new TAC sort of take the charge on that, given the timing of everything right now. It doesn't make a ton of sense for us to start that and then have the new TAC kind of take it over type thing. But happy to hear others' thoughts, but that was my understanding.
So my thoughts are this could be a good first agenda item for the new TAC.
Yep, absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. And coincidentally, you're elected into the TAC, Luke. So congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? Okay, we can wrap up 15 minutes early. I just want to say thank
Just
you to
one
everybody.
question again, maybe for David or for the community, the TAC community. Will there be a plan to revisit the working groups, or has that already been accomplished by the TAC? I'm sorry if that's already been discussed.
No, that is something that is on the agenda for the future TAC to take care of. So one of the, we discussed it last week, is that to get all the working group leads to come in and start giving presentations about where they're at, their status, where they envision going. And then they'll kind of coordinate that with the governing board and their OKRs and kind of bring everybody into alignment. So yeah.
Great. Thank you for that.
Yep.
I just wanted to say as well, Ryan, thank you for your service. You've been a wonderful chair. You've been great at sort of bringing a level head to matters and resolving areas that needed a resolution. And so you just done a wonderful job. So very grateful for your service.
Oh, thank you, Luke. I very much appreciate that. It has been an absolute pleasure working with all of you guys, and I fully intend to still participate in this as a more casual member, of course, but I will definitely still be involved. And I just want to say thank you to everybody that's participated. It's been really great to see the increase in participation, especially over the last couple of months. You know, I think there was a time where some of our TAC meetings had about 5 people, you know, at most, and now we're hovering around 30. So it's really great to see, and it's great to see everything that's been accomplished. So looking forward to seeing the new year and what continues to happen. So thank you all very, very much. And if there's not anything else, we will wrap up 15 minutes early.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.